Welcome to the Behind the Bench Sports Network. This is the Kobe Bryant Film Room, man, and I wanted to come by and have this conversation with you guys real quick while I'm on my morning stroll. I like to get out on my morning stroll when I'm, early in the morning when I'm trying to talk and walk with God, and it's good exercise to get out there and walk and get your sunlight and get your day started. You also get to think about what you're going to do that day and plan for the future. Gives me a good amount of alone time. Sometimes you need time to be at peace with yourself. If you're ever stressed out, man, get out and take a walk, man. It's very relaxing. It's very soothing. Or take a drive, somewhere by yourself. Just get out there and, think, get your time, have your time to think. So that's what I'm doing, just in case you hear the cars in the background of the video. But I wanted to say this, right? And I had a dude try to, this dude was saying, well, such and such, Kobe shot this field goal percentage and that field goal percentage. Just keep repeating the same thing over. Bro, for you guys who keep repeating this, you don't think I heard that argument before? That low field goal percentage, inefficiency, and all that stuff. That's the Nick Wright playbook, because people can't think for themselves. They take the Nick Wright talking points and come to YouTube online with it and try to debate, and them things get shot down pretty quick. And then they turn into victims, and when you start bringing up other stuff, they say, well, it's different now. It's different now. The time period's different. You gotta understand, we're disrespecting the new generation and all this stuff. And I'm sitting back saying, well, you're the one who wants to cross eras. You have a habit of trying to compare two different eras. Comparing the 2000s to the modern basketball that we're watching now. It's not the same. It's not the same defensively. It's not the same offensively. 30 is not what it was 30, 40 years ago. It's averaging 30 points per game. It's not the same. This is a league, right, that emphasizes high scoring outputs, right? The stats, is what we call inflated. And it's not to disrespect these guys and not to say that they're not great scorers. It's just that even the commissioner admitted it's just easier to score now. He created an atmosphere where it's easier to score. It's not even up for debate. And so the scorers of the past are not the scorers, now. And so I asked these dudes, I said, please stop trying to cross eras when you're talking about basketball with stats, with numbers, points, rebounds, assists. You can only compare that person and what they did in their era. You can't try and move a guy like Kobe to the 80s. You can't try and move a guy like Michael Jordan to modern basketball, which is right now, in 2024. You're taking a guy out of his era. Can't remove Wilt from the 60s and put him in today's game. That's fantasy basketball. And I try to give him an out. I try to say, hey, look, listen. We all know that the average field goal percentage was around 45%. So to compare that against the average field goal percentage now between guards, which is much higher because the lanes are opened up and there's more spacing, is ridiculous. I'll give you guys an example. I think LeBron James in the 2000s was his field goal percentage was around 47 and 48%, right? LeBron James back then wasn't known as a shooter. He was more of a driver to the basket. He's taken a lot more shots now in his career. right? But think about it. You're driving to the basket. He plays small forward / power forward / point guard at times. But he's only giving you about 47-48% field goal percentage during that time. Kobe gave you 46. And as you see, for the decade, 46% is pretty high. This dude's shooting the most difficult shots that you ever seen in league history and still shooting 46% for that decade, right? Which is extremely high for a guard in his era. The problem with people is that when you get started going across eras, they don't understand that you're disrespecting the game. Why do I say that? Because that player did not play against the same competition. That player did not play against the same. And I know Kobe and LeBron, their careers overlapped a little bit. So I'm not particularly talking about these two. I just used these two to open up the example. But you're not facing the same prime. So for example, when Kobe was in the 90s, he played in the 90s, but he really wasn't a 90s player per se. He only played 3 years in the 90s, and he didn't even start, right? So the context of the era that in context of the era Kobe played in, they did not start young players. They didn't, and when I say young players, I'm not talking about rookies. I'm talking about guys who were 17, 18 years old. Context matters, right? It's like I was talking to this guy, and he was talking about Michael Jordan's rookie year. And I said, well, Michael Jordan was 22 coming out of college. So he started right away because he came out of college. Kobe, he had to prove himself amongst the veterans because he was still young. He was extremely young. He was 17. That's a whole 5 years of basketball, right? So what I'm saying is that when you talk about context of eras and context of course, now you got younger guys being given the keys to the franchise to do whatever they want. That wasn't the same back then. There was restrictions. There was just like for example, free agency wasn't the same. Some guys could not leave their teams. They were stuck. So when we look at the win-loss column, it's like, well, bro, if you play for a losing team, most likely you're going down with the losing team. There is no movement. There is no player movement. This came along later. But when they talk about a particular era, and then you talk about their particular era, things that are not favorable, they get upset and they get pissed off. Why we got, just like Gilbert Arenas did. Gilbert Arenas spent all of his time trying to explain why Kobe ain't this, Kobe ain't that. And then as soon as you start talking about LeBron, Gilbert says, well, why can't we just respect everybody? Well, that's not what you're doing. That's not what the media's been doing. The media's been trying to take away and overlap eras. That's what the media's been doing. Because the media likes entertainment. They like people to argue so that it generates views and revenue. And then these same fans use the media's talking points and they come online with them. The point of this video is to let you guys know that you can still have your greatest of all time, but to compare stats across eras is stupid. And it's, to me, it's irritating. It's dumb. comparing field goal percentage, comparing the three ball, when you know it's like going to the 70s and saying, look what he shot from the three, or the early 80s. Look what he shot from the three. Like, dude, you know damn well they weren't shooting threes like that. So to judge these guys based on the 3-point percentage and how many they shot a game is stupid. The only acknowledgement that you can make is, hey, they shoot more threes now. It doesn't make you it doesn't mean they couldn't shoot threes. It means there was no 3-point line. You got guys like Pistol Pete who were shooting way beyond the 3-point line. You know, you had several other guys. It didn't count as a 3, counted as a 2. Jerry West was shooting beyond that. And so the rules, the errors, the degree of difficulty, how it was to score for guards, the time frame, the historical precedent, the historical value, the context of the era matters, right? So before you try to double dip in somebody else's legacy, right, you need to be thinking about these things. And you sound like a fool trying to compare statistics among eras, comparing awards across eras, comparing competition across eras. The position evolves. Some eras centers are a major factor. Some eras guards are major factors. Right? The importance of defenses, different types of defenses, lane violation rules. How did they call charges? How did they call flagrants? Were there flagrants? How many teams were there? Right? Difference between conferences. Which conferences was perceived as the toughest? Because I've been hearing a lot of people say, oh, well, Kobe couldn't carry a team to the finals like LeBron did. Well, look at the records of the teams in the East and look at the records of the teams of the West. And Kobe won back-to-back championships in the hardest conference to ever play in, with the most 50-win teams of all time. And he beat the most 50-win teams of all time. And I don't have to take away from somebody else in order to say what he did in his era. Matter of fact, I could stick to just his era and explain to you what he did. I don't have to overlap and play fantasy basketball and say, well, if he would have played in this era, he would have did this and this. Right? Right? We all know stats. With stats, basketball is situational. You don't have a player just putting up numbers just to fucking put up numbers. Some players sacrifice their numbers just to win the games, just to win championships. Right? So it's idiotic to compare a guy on the championship team to a guy who's on the team without that's not good enough to win a championship. Obviously, his numbers are going to be better. Obviously, because he's going to have to do more. But putting that player in the same situation, they produce the same amount of numbers. Me, I'll tell you guys how I look at basketball. I always look at the player in their prime. I don't judge players out of their prime. I look at the player in his prime and I say, who would I rather have? Who has the most strengths and the most weaknesses? Right? Both sides of the ball. Who plays both sides of the ball? Who would I rather have according to film? I don't do the stat game. I can play the stat game because there's stats that benefit Michael, there's stats that benefit Kobe. I can play that game, but I don't, because it doesn't make any sense to do that when we're comparing across eras. It just doesn't make any sense. Obviously, If the commissioner made the game open so people could score, why are we surprised people are scoring a lot? To me, that makes no sense, to be utterly shocked that guys are scoring. You have role players scoring just as much as Hall of Famers are, or just regular All-Stars scoring as much as the top Hall of Famers did. And so the stats are inflated, and we understand that. That doesn't mean a player from this generation like a Jokic or anybody like that is less than. That just means we can't compare numbers across eras. We could compare him for this era to his competition, and we could say, damn, Jokic is breaking all these records, man, and doing this thing, right? And we could say all time, it's fair to say all time that no one's ever scored this amount of points in this amount of times. But ultimately, when you're putting player versus player, you can't use none of that shit. I'm not saying it don't count at all. I'm just saying player versus player, none of that shit means nothing. It don't. So I go off ability. I go off of things that I can see and watch and verify on film footage. And that's how you make the game simple, is you just stick to the footage, the film, the players you've watched, and study their game and what they struggle with, right? And what they struggle with. And so that's how I look at the game of basketball. And y'all let me know if I'm out of bounds or in bounds. And let me know if this video makes any sense to you or not. But to me, I think people have the wrong type of basketball discussions. And I know a lot of fans, they start crying after they critique your guy in his era. They start crying when you bring up theirs and you start critiquing this era. I'd rather respect all the eras of basketball, even though I have my favorites that I lean towards. I respect all these guys for getting out there and putting their shoes on, because you can't help the era that you play in. And so respect to all the NBA players of all time, past and present. We need to do better with the game, y'all. We ain't doing the game justice, in my opinion. And it's becoming toxic. These NBA conversations becoming real toxic. But anyways, this is Kobe Bryant Film Room signing out from Behind the Bench Sports Network. Subscribe to the Behind the Bench Sports Network and subscribe to the Kobe Bryant Film Room. Also hit the notifications just in case you're not getting them. Make sure you hit that notification so you can get our videos when they drop. And hit the like button while you're at it. But yeah, this is the Kobe Bryant Film Room. I'm out. Peace.